It's 8 o'clock in the morning on the 25th day of the third month of the year, going into the second week of the coronavirus apocalypse. And it is I, your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the confusing gatekeeper. And this is going out to all those special someones who seem to find my videos confusing. I guess I use too many big words. So let's explain one of those big words I use a lot, the McGuffin. You will hear me use that word a lot, the McGuffin. What is a McGuffin? Well, the most classic example of a McGuffin is the Maltese Falcon from the famous film and book, The Maltese Falcon. Now, the point of the Maltese Falcon, the point of the McGuffin, is to move the story forward, move the interaction of the individuals involved in the story forward, and facilitate growth of the individuals and interaction of the individuals. The McGuffin itself is pointless. At the end of the Maltese Falcon, they find out it's not really the Maltese Falcon that they thought it was, or maybe it was, but they were so enraptured with the actual getting to the McGuffin that once they had the McGuffin, they come up with a reason to continue looking for a McGuffin because they think the McGuffin they found isn't the real McGuffin. And we never know. Maybe it is the real Maltese Falcon. Maybe it isn't the real Maltese Falcon, but whatever. It facilitates the entire plot of the movie and moving the plot forward. And when they achieve the goal, it facilitates them finding another goal and continuing their adventures because they're having so much fun interacting with each other, and they've grown as a group dynamic and they want to continue that group dynamic. It doesn't matter where in the story the McGuffin is. It doesn't matter what the McGuffin is. The McGuffin's job is not to be a thing. The McGuffin's job is to move the story forward and instigate that intertwining of individuals in the story so that they feel a closer combination with each other and a reason to continue to motivate to move forward with the story. And because the McGuffin is so fluid, you as the storyteller can place it anywhere in the story in order to move the story forward. Perfect example, as I've used hundreds of times. Let's say you need your player characters to get a McGuffin. We'll say the McGuffin is this letter. And this McGuffin, this letter, is in a location. Let's say the sawmill. But for whatever reasons, they're not going to the sawmill. They have become enraptured with another idea and are moving the story in a different way. Now you have two responses basically. Response A is to try and railroad them back to the direction you want to go, which is it is anti-productive to the ability of the McGuffin to try and railroad your players. If you butt heads with the players, they will butt heads back. And the harder and harder you try and railroad them to go to where your thing is, in this case the sawmill, the harder and harder they will resist because they feel like you're trying to make them do something that isn't part of their idea, their story. That you're trying to force them to make decisions that isn't theirs. And nobody likes that. Well, very few people like that. Some people like to be told what to do in the game, even if they say they don't. But when you reach that table flipping moment and you feel like, oh my God, they've ruined my story because they killed the important NPC, or they didn't go where I wanted them to go, or they didn't get the thing, and you're at that table flipping point of rage because you feel like they've ruined your story by not doing what you want them to do, because the McGuffin is so fluid, because you can put this McGuffin anywhere, other choice is just simply go, breathe in, breathe out, and move the McGuffin to where they're going. Until they find the Maltese Falcon, they don't know where the Maltese Falcon is. And part of the fun is looking for the Maltese Falcon. Until they find the letter and it's actually tangibly in their hands, It's a Schrodinger's cat. It does or does not exist. They do not or they do know where it is. No matter where they go in the story, the MacGuffin could be there because it's not there until they go there. The MacGuffin is intangible and constantly floating until they actually go to where they need to be for the MacGuffin to come into play. And if the MacGuffin is in the sawmill and they're not going to the sawmill, don't try and force them to go to the sawmill because they will just fight against you. Rather, move the MacGuffin or place individuals and obstacles in their path that make them rethink their choice. They don't go to the sawmill and you are dead set on keeping it in the sawmill, and the farther they get away from the sawmill, place monoliths, icons in their path, road signs, to slowly get them to go back to the sawmill. Place NPCs that give them reasons to go back to the sawmill, hook lines, whatever, so that they go back to the sawmill. If you're dead set on them being in that sawmill and having that sawmill encounter, don't force them, but gradually direct them, redirect that energy. But that's one solution. The better solution is simply move the MacGuffin. And if you're enraptured with that encounter and that encounter has to happen, move the encounter. The sawmill isn't important. The MacGuffin isn't important. It's getting to the MacGuffin that's what's important. The MacGuffin is nothing. It doesn't mean anything other than to instigate the story moving forward. So it can be anywhere. It can be anything. This letter can be anywhere in your story until they find it. So if you need to move it, move it. If they're not going to the sawmill, move the MacGuffin to where they are going. So inevitably they find it, that key to moving the story forward. And then once the MacGuffin is in their hands, you place another MacGuffin out of their reach. Or you give them a reason to think maybe this isn't the real MacGuffin, like the end of the Maltese Falcon. Maybe it is the real Maltese Falcon. Maybe it isn't the real Maltese Falcon. It doesn't matter that they found the Maltese Falcon. What matters is they had that story together and they want to continue the story. So they continue going, leaving the main character at the end holding the stuff that dreams are made of in his hands. So that, my friends, my little confused special snowflakes, is what a MacGuffin is and how you as a storyteller can use that idea to instigate your characters to move the story along and to interact with each other by constantly dangling the Maltese Falcon, the MacGuffin over their head, and constantly saying, well, it's not there, maybe it's over there, and constantly thinking in your back of your mind that once they get to where you want the MacGuffin to be, it's going to be there. If they're not going to the sawmill, move it to where they are going. Eventually, those things that happen, that need to happen to move your story forward within that 4-hour time period, happen. But there doesn't have to be an exact order in what they happen. And that's what's so great about the idea of the MacGuffin and the idea of moving and changing the pieces on the board to fit the direction the player characters are going. It's everything's all about let them do what they want. Fine, let them do what they want. But then just also remember, this is still your story. So move the MacGuffin. It's okay. The MacGuffin isn't anything. It's the idea of that something moving the story forward and forcing the player characters to interact and create a dynamic relationship with each other that positively changes and moves the story forward. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. If it wasn't too confusing, please like, please share, please subscribe, and if you're feeling generous, please support me because I'm out of food. And if it was too confusing, well, I'm sorry, but I'll talk to you later, losers.